Joining the More Than Your Age podcast is attorney Lavonne Cliff Thomas. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Insert applause. Yay! I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much for joining me. I'm happy to have you here today, Lavonne. I'm looking forward to learning about you and hearing your story. So you have served in ministry as a pastor and minister at your church since 2000. You also were an elementary teacher. Did you do both of those jobs simultaneously?
No. I taught for about 7 years, 7 or 8 years, and I've always been actively involved in ministry, but teaching was my primary profession, paid profession. So I stayed in that for almost a decade, and then I transitioned because we started having children back to back to back to back to back. So we just basically felt like it was better for one of us to be home. And initially, like I was very much opposed to that because, I had both degrees and I was doing well in my profession. And I just felt like I don't want to give that up. I felt like I worked so hard for that. I didn't want to give it up. And at the time, I didn't see the kids as, be honest with you, I didn't see it like, oh, this is such a wonderful blessing. It felt like, okay, my whole life is about to radically shift. And am I ready for this? But when we started having kids back to back, economically, it was obvious that I would be working to pay for childcare. And I just didn't want that. I didn't want it financially. And I didn't want the kids to be reared by anybody else. Now, listen, no shade to anybody that has to do it because it's necessary. But I really felt like the Lord was impressing on me to come home. And that's why I did it.
Because that wasn't what you were initially planning to do, you said you
Yeah.
had these degrees that you were proud of, that you had worked hard for.
Yeah.
When you did, like maybe that first year, or even however long, first months that you were at home, was that a big struggle for you just to realize like my identity has kind of shifted of I'm no longer this teacher in the classroom and now I'm with the kids? Or like, sometimes people say you're not using your brain, which drives me up the wall. But did you kind of feel that as well? Or what was that like?
The transition.
Yeah, like when you officially were at home and no longer in a titled position
Yeah.
outside of mom.
Yeah. Well, listen, I don't know what you're used to in terms of your podcast, but I'm incredibly honest, like sometimes brutally honest. And it kind of goes against some of our cultural norms and things like that. But I have to be honest with you and tell you, when I first started as what we would call a full-time stay-at-home mom, it was absolutely difficult. It was the hardest transition that I've ever had to make. And it wasn't so much that my identity was tied up in my profession. It was that I felt like my world stopped. And I looked at it like, oh my goodness, for the next 18 plus years, this is what I'll be doing. That was my outlook in the beginning. Like, is this it? Like, surely this cannot be it. So I had a hard time just coming out of being with adults all day, being productive, helping other people. And now I felt like I was confined. Like the early years of motherhood for me, I'm telling you, Erica, I felt like you ever seen the movies where people are incarcerated and they have the little lines on the wall where they're like
Yeah.
1 year down that's how it felt for me. So like when my kids would reach the next birthday, I'd be like, oh, okay, cool. 16 more years to 18. Oh, wow. Okay. 14 more years to 18. Like that's how it was in the beginning for me. But I just didn't understand. I didn't get how valuable my role as a mom. I just didn't see it. And it took me years to really develop as a mother. Some people have it naturally. Like my husband's a natural dad. Like wow, he's just a great dad. It took me a while to really evolve into being a great mother, a wonderful mother that enjoys rearing children. I was doing it well because I can be one of those people like I want to excel at everything I do. So I was doing really well with that. But in my heart, it was like, I don't know. I don't know if I can do this, for the next 18 plus years. So it was a
Mhm.
difficult transition, Erica, but it took time. I finally, I won't call it arrive, but I understand my value as a wife and as a mother and my importance in their lives.
I like how you said you have found your value in your role as being the mother and a wife. And something you said at the very beginning too, you said, I don't know how your listeners are, if I could be honest. I want you, yes, we need to be honest. Like that's the whole thing with this is can't just be like everything's perfect and easy and it's like, no, I mean, whatever happened in aspects of your life that like it was hard at first being a mom. Wait, when you like you said, not fully arrived, but when you realized, okay, what time or how long had it been since you had left the job where you were like, okay, I really have this rhythm and I am feeling accomplished and I'm enjoying this motherhood journey? How long had that been, or what was like the defining moments?
I, I dare say that I can pinpoint the year, and that would be 2012. And I became a mom in 2004, married in 2002, mom in 2004. I'd say that pivotal moment was 2012. And that would be when I found out that I had to have the first craniotomy. I think that did it for me. That was the pivotal moment.
Okay. We're going to get to that. I want to hear a
Yeah,
little more
I know.
about that. I know that's probably a very hard and difficult time for you as well. Well, to kind of go back, I guess, to the teaching, education, and the work in ministry, I know you specialize in reading, but I do want to hear more of how you did get involved in ministry and
Yeah.
your specific role in education.
Yeah. Okay. So specifically in education, I taught second grade. And then my second year of teaching, my administrators pulled me out of the classroom to train for a program that's called Reading Recovery. And so what that program does is it specializes in working with first grade students who are below grade level. So it was my assignment to work with them one on one every day. And there's a process and a technique and everything that we do, and to bring them either at or beyond grade level. And I loved it. I loved it because really what I saw was it wasn't so much that the kids didn't have the skill set, they lacked the confidence. And once I got the confidence in them, the skill set, implementing and teaching them the skill set became easier because now they believe that they can actually do it. Because when people are struggling, kids in particular, when they're struggling with reading, it does something to their morale. Even though they can't articulate that, you can see it in their little faces, and they don't believe that they could do it. They don't believe that. So I like being the one that gave them hope and to show them like, no, you got this. And it could be something like cat, bat, sat, but if you make a big deal out of it, you got them. So that was my role for the next 7 years, to pull them out and to work one on one with them. But as you were talking about ministry, it wasn't separate, so to speak, because I saw what I did with the children as ministry. It was something that God had given me to do. And I just did it every day in the classroom. I got the chance to show the love of God through patience, through loving on them, through holding them, meaning giving hugs, things like that. I began to show the love of God to them. But in terms of what we call like a formalized ministry, I had always served in ministry since 2000. That's when I started. I was really young, but I was still serving in ministry. I was ordained in 2000. And I wasn't serving as a pastor there at that particular church. I was serving as an evangelist and prophet. Those were my assignments in that house. And I stayed there until I got married. And after that, we transitioned to my that would be my in-laws ministry, and then over to the church where we are now. So now my husband and I serve as we are not senior leaders. We're not over the entire church. We serve alongside of our pastors as two of the pastors on staff with other pastors, and we have our own delegated responsibilities and things like that. So I get a chance to work with people with all types of issues, ups and downs, life happenings, but I love it. It's taxing sometimes, but I love it.
Yeah. Do your kids like are you able to take your kids along with you when you meet with other people, or like do they get to see you serving in that capacity, or does it vary just depending on, who you're meeting with and helping?
Yeah, now, my children are older now. So when they were little, if we had different things that we had to do, they can come along with us because they would just have to go wherever we go. But our kids
Mhm.
are a part of our church as well. The older two are in college. They're not with us, they're gone. But the younger three, yeah, they see us. When they come on Sundays, they see us. They hear us when we're on Zoom and we're having our meetings or we're having prayer. They see it, and they've been seeing this all of their lives, because one of the things that we found is that you got to bring your kids alongside with you. They have to see you doing it, especially in order to let them see that this thing is real. They get a chance to see mommy and daddy at home, what we look like, what we sound like, how we act. We have to live it out in front of them. And so they've had a chance to see us at church, and then they get in the car and go home with us, and they get a chance to see, like, yeah, mom and dad really lived this thing out. They mean it for real. This is not acting on Sunday and then turning into somebody else on Monday. We are who we are, living epistles, and that's what we want to demonstrate to our kids, so that they can see that ministry is not all about preaching. It's not, that's minimal. It's showing people the love of God every day. It's showing people that even when you make mistakes, repent, get back up, let's do this again. It's
Mhm.
about walking it out for real.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And even like you said, when repenting or you making mistakes, having your kids see that and then showing them this is what it looks like, and we repent, we move forward, and we're not perfect, but we're also not going to be just, hey, we're showy here on Sunday. This is like our everyday
Mhm.
life. This is what is valuable and important. I think that's great. Well, so okay. So LaVon, you said we talked briefly, you had left education to stay home with the kids, take on this full responsibility. We're marking down the days while you
Literally.
like how many more years do I have of this? But then also so we mentioned you have 5 kids and you decided to start law school with
Yeah.
3 little ones at home. So we had education, ministry, as we said, it all kind of encompassed the same thing. But then now here's law. And at this point, for all of us who do not know you, law seems very random. So why was law important to you?
Yeah, it seems random, but definitely not random. So I'd like to say it began when I was little. I had a fourth grade teacher, Mr. Joe Taglioli. He was an Italian man, and he used to call me, and forgive me if I'm butchering the Italian word, but I think I have it. He never called me by my name. He called me consiglioli, which is Italian for counselor, which also translates into lawyer, attorney. He always called me that. Why? Because I used to go to bat for kids in my class. I would always advocate for someone or advocate for the class. And so he always called me that. But I never forgot that. And then a lot of people, adults, used to say, like, you should use that mouth, make money with that mouth. You could be a good lawyer. You like to argue. They would say different things like that. And I would hear that growing up, but I didn't really think anything of it. But it's a prime example of how our natural hardwiring, our giftings, they can go in two different directions. Because I had a group of, I won't call it a group, but I had some adults that would say, like, you talk too much. You need to be quiet. I would hear that a lot. But then I also had a couple people who would actually say, like, no, you should really consider, you should become a lawyer. You're good at X, you're good at Y. And they would lay it out for me. So being a mom, let's tie this in. It made me think about my kids and their giftings, my kids and their strengths, how we can either shut it down or we can cause it to blossom. And instead of looking at this one as, or calling this one bossy, wait a minute, they're not bossy, they're actually a leader. I just need to show them how to exude those leadership skills. So, anyway, bringing it back to becoming an attorney, I never forgot that. And even after I got my master's, I was at Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, Florida, and I went over to Florida State, which is like kind of across the street from our school, and I picked up the law school application. But Erica, I was just too tired. I was just done with school. Like I don't want it anymore. So I didn't go straight to law school. I moved back to Michigan, met and married my husband. Fast forward to 2006, guess what happened? I had a dream. And I
Okay.
don't mean like a daydream, or, I mean a real go to bed at night, have a dream. Had this dream, and I was sitting in a law school classroom, And the classroom was empty, but I just saw myself sitting in there, and I knew that it was law school. I just knew. And that was in 2006. And so I started praying about it, started talking to my husband about it, just kind of get his, feelings about it. And he's like, yeah, I think you should look into it. Started studying for the LSAT. That was in 2007. I started studying for the LSAT. And girl, I took the LSAT like 4 times. I think it was like 4 times because I couldn't get the score. I just wasn't meeting that cut for the score. And I was getting frustrated, like, well, maybe this is not God. But it was still the Lord, even though I didn't do well. So eventually I got into law school and I started law school in 2008. And at that time, I had a 4-year old, a 2-year old, and a 1-year old. Well, she was
My
11 months. Crazy.
That's incredible. So, okay, so when you took the test, the LSAT 4 times,
Hmm.
and obviously you continued forward to taking it again because you thought, God is like, is this really something that I should be doing?
Yeah.
Did that happen after the second time or the third time? And because I know a lot of people would use that and they would say, okay, that's my sign. I don't need to do it. And so what made you say, let's just do it one more time because I really think that I need to give it another try?
Well, I had another dream.
You did.
Yep,
Wow.
I had another dream that in the dream, I'm trying to explain it so it makes sense without giving like all the details. But in the dream, I saw that I was being accepted into what we would call a provisional program. So, with the particular school that I went to, they had a provisional program. And so I saw that I was getting accepted into that. Well, in order to be accepted into the provisional program, that meant that I had to pass the LSAT. I just didn't have the score high enough to what we would call gain full acceptance. So I was put in a provisional program where I had to like prove myself to see if I can cut it in law school. So that let me know if I made it in the dream to the provisional program, that means I need to take this test again because I'm going to get in. And that's exactly what happened. So that was my motivation to keep going.
Man,
Yep.
do you tell that story to people who may not believe in God?
I've never
Have
told it
you
before.
really?
Yeah. Like people, when I mean like this in a public forum,
Yeah.
no, I've never shared it before. So this is definitely the first.
So I'm a Christian. So everything you're saying, I'm like, yep, yep, yep.
Yeah.
I believe that. But there are people who listen who aren't. And so I would love for you just to speak to someone who might just say, like, that's just your subconscious. That, like, I don't know. How do you know that that's actually God? What would you
Yeah.
say?
Okay. Well, for me, I can only say for me, how do you know that that's God? It comes through relationship. The same way, for instance, in a room full of people, if my kids call my name, meaning mom or mommy or anything like that, or my husband calls my name, even if it's a room full of people, I respond to their voices. Why? Because we have a relationship. We talk frequently. I know them. I'm with them all the time. So their voice is distinguished amongst other voices. So with the Lord, because I spend time in His Word, I know what He sounds like. Because I talk to Him and He speaks to me, I know what He sounds like. But that didn't happen in one day. That's taken place over years. Just like with my kids, having them in the house for years, and my husband having him with me for years. I know their voices so quickly. It's the same thing. So it's not, for me, it's not an issue of, oh, that's just your subconscious. Oh, not at all. Not at all. It's the Lord speaking to me. And I know when it's Him and I know when it's not Him. And if I'm not sure, then what I do is I run it past trusted voices. The mentors that I have two that I have in my life. And if I'm not sure about something, I run it past them. I wait. I don't act on it until I know.
That's good. Running past your mentors and waiting
Yeah,
just to ensure that you know for sure that that's from the Lord and not just you thinking
absolutely.
about that. So, okay, so you had basically an infant, almost a 1-year-old, and a 4 and a 2-year-old. And when you started, did you, because you knew it was from the Lord, so this may be different. How old were you when you started?
32.
32. Okay. Did you feel like I missed it? It's too late. Like, why am I doing this? Like, I've been out of school for too long. I've got kids. What was your thought process in all of that?
You know, when I first started, I felt pretty good. It wasn't until we actually got in class and I started seeing who my peers were, and a lot of them were much younger. Now, there were some that were older than me, but for the most part, they were much younger. And I saw the speed at which they were doing things. And that was in 2008 when I started. And they had their laptops and they're flying. They're clicking and clacking and clicking and clacking. And I'm a writer. I write everything. That just works. That's my modality. That just works for me. So honestly, I did begin to feel like, I don't know about this. I don't know. I don't know what this is going to look like because I started to add up how long it would likely take me to finish. Looking at them, knowing that when they're done, they're going to be under 30 years old. And I did start to feel like, is it too late? Is anybody going to hire me? Who's going to want somebody that's mid 30s, almost 40 when they're done? Who's going to hire me? That was a very pervasive issue in my heart, especially at the beginning.
When you would see these other students and they're clicking and clacking and they're, faster as it would appear, they were going to finish sooner because they didn't have all the kids at home and they were going to be younger. When it would affect you, what did you have to do in order to realize, like, no, this is my story. That's their story. I'm on my pace right now.
Yeah, one, and I won't call it in order of priority, but I'll just call it one. My husband's an incredible encourager. And I would always just kind of lay it out to him how I was feeling, how I was thinking. And then he would always point me back to God. Always. He would say, you got to go back to what he said. What did he say? Get back in front of him, get back before him, and get that reminder. So then I would go back to God, most of the times in tears, like, oh, I can't do this. But he will remind me. And then I'll share this with you. I have shared this before. My first semester of law school, because I went part time for obvious reasons, at least that's what worked for me part time. So I had 3 classes, and one of the classes was on a Sunday. And I felt like when I registered for it, I'm not saying the Lord said, I just felt like he was leading me not to do that because it was on a Sunday and I'm always at church. That's what I love. But I was like, well, let's just get it out the way. That's how I felt. I didn't have any other days of the week available. So I had 2 classes on Saturday and 1 class on Sunday. So I took it. I took that class. I passed the class, but that wasn't the issue. The issue was I felt like I was going against what he wanted me to do. So fast forward, I ended up that semester, I got a C in 1 class and I got an F in contracts. And I was devastated because number one, I have never seen that letter grade in my life. So I didn't even know how to respond to failing a law school course. So I was going to quit. That was my determining factor. I'm like, clearly, this is not for me. I can't do it. I passed the other 2, but I failed this. Maybe this is not it. And so what happened was I was going to Bible study on our Bible study day, I think was on a Tuesday. All right. So I was in class on a Sunday. It's not at church. I went on a Tuesday to Bible study. And when I got there, one of the members saw me come in and he was like, LaVon, the pastor called you out. He didn't call me by name, but they were looking for you Sunday. And I'm like, well, what happened Sunday? They said at the end of the service, our pastor began to prophesy. And as he was prophesying about a member, which would have been me, a member who was in law school. And he began to run down what was going to take place concerning my life in the legal community. At the time, my pastor didn't know me. Know me as in it was just more of a speaking, hello, pastor. It was
Wow.
like that. Yeah, we didn't, there was no like relationship or anything like that. It was just like waving. So when I came on that Tuesday, that following Tuesday, one of the members who was there that Sunday, they told me. So at the end of Bible study, they went to him and they told him, on Sunday, when you were prophesying about a member being in law school, that was her. She's here. She's here. So he prayed for me at the end of Bible study, and he began to talk about what would take place in law school and what would take place in my legal career and the favor and the connections that the Lord would give me. Now, do you know how essential that is? Because he had no idea that I was contemplating quitting. So when he released that word and began to talk to me about the favor that I would have in the legal community and graduating and all of that, what it forced me to do anytime I got in a serious bind mentally as it relates to law school, I had to jump forward and now walk my way back. So I had to say, if I'm going to become a judge, I had to become an attorney. If I become an attorney, I had to graduate from law school. I had to pass the bar. So I had to work my way all the way back to where I was at that moment. And I'll tell you, it was that prophetic word that kept me from unenrolling. Is that a word? Unenroll? Yeah.
Yeah.
Disenroll, unenroll. But that's the prophetic word that kept me in law school. That word right there. Because he spoke to where he saw me. And all I had to do was now walk it out one semester at a time.
Wow. And
Yeah.
I think what's so key about that too is that going back to the people who are listening that may just be like, the key is that he didn't know you. I mean,
Nope.
maybe it was a high, and then
Mm-mm.
that is fascinating. Wow. And I love too how what you needed to do in order to get you forward was to see that long term
The
vision of what
end.
that would be
Yep.
and work your way back. Yeah, that's
Yep.
incredible. Well, okay, so you started law school in 2008
Yep.
and then you completed the degree in 2015. So you were
Yes.
raising your children and we briefly mentioned you survived one craniotomy in 2012 and then you had two more post completing your degree. But while you were working on the degree, you experienced this life-changing procedure. What happened?
Well, so you want me to start with the first one? Like, where do you want me to begin?
Yeah, yeah, take us there.
Okay, so in law school 2008, all was going relatively well. 2009, I lost my grandmother, so I did take a semester out for that because she reared me, and so I just had to recover from that. And then 2012, I had an experience where we were at church. We were at prayer. We had weekly prayer, and I was at prayer, and one of the members told me that they said, like, your speech is weird. That's how she described your speech is kind of weird. I didn't notice anything. But she said, you feeling okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And she kept saying, well, why are you talking like that? I felt a little weak, but to me, I didn't think it was abnormal because I'm a mother in law school. I was tired, like permanently tired for a number of years. I didn't think anything of it. But I began to kind of lose my, let's see, my limbs were just not cooperating well, for lack of better words. I think it was the left side. I think it was the left side that was not cooperating, plus the speech. So she said, okay, I'm going to take you over to the hospital. I'll call Leon, that's my husband. I'll call Leon, let him know that we're headed there. So they get me over to the hospital. And of course, I don't know if you're familiar with how diagnoses work, but I've come to learn that doctors start very broad and then they narrow down. So when I first got there, they did tests for stroke, TIA, which is mini stroke, multiple sclerosis. Like these are all the things that they were just naming all kinds of stuff. And I remember telling them, that's not it. No, that's not it. That's not, I don't have that. I don't have that. And I really meant that. It wasn't so much of a by faith statement. I just knew, like, that's not it. I don't know what this thing is, but it's not that. So fast forward, I'm in the hospital. And I think I stayed about a week. I was there because my symptoms were presenting like a stroke, but there was no evidence of it on an MRI or a CAT scan or anything like that. So while I was there, one of the doctors said, have you ever been hit in the head? And I said, well, I used to play volleyball competitively, so that's possible, from spikes, from it's possible. I said, that's possible. And they said, well, we see this mass, this thing, and I'm going to use how he described it. He said it sits at the intersection of where your eye and your ear meet. So if you can just kind of picture going like that, there's something there in that bone, and it's eating away at that bone. It was called an aneurysmal bone cyst, ABC, as they call it. And so that cyst was eating that bone up. They have no idea where it came from. I had no other symptoms prior to that moment. So they said the only way we can treat it is we got to take it out. And I definitely didn't want that for obvious reasons because there was a possibility that I could lose my speech. Yeah, and my hearing. And they said, well, after the surgery, you will have some double vision, which I did. So they patched up the good eye and I had double vision. It was wild. But I remember asking the doctor, I said, talk to me about, the speech aspect of it. I said, because I believe one day I'm going to be a judge and I have never seen a judge on a bench doing sign language. I said, I just haven't seen it. So what's up with that? So he said, it could be an impactor, but we don't know for sure. So we have the surgery May 14th, 2012. I remember the dates of all three of my surgeries. We have the surgery May 14th, 2012, and they shaved off a whole quadrant. All of this was gone, and they cut me from here all the way up to the middle of my head. And the pictures are so ugly, but they removed the skull and they got that cyst out and everything. So I had these ugly bandages here and I had no hair and it was a mess. It really was. But I had to take a year out of school because I had to recover. So there were some things that were easy for you. I had to kind of learn how to do those things again. So when I got home from the hospital, I think I was there maybe a week. I think a week. And my kids were much younger then. So I had to have help walking, going upstairs, brushing my teeth. I had a patch on my eye, double vision. I couldn't really laugh because of the pain. Like the jaw was the way the nerves in the jaw were cut. It impacted my ability to open my mouth. So I spent some time just quiet because it just was easier just not to talk at all. So, but of course, everybody was praying for me in my circle. I was laying hands on myself too, so that it wouldn't take as long as they thought it would in terms of the recovery. But I'll tell you, it took me a good year to physically come back from that surgery. And they still, to this day, they don't know where it came from.
That,
Yeah.
that's fascinating. Okay, so it took about a year, you said physically. What about emotionally, mentally for recovering?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a timeline marker on it, but I can say that I went through PTSD, if that's the word, medical PTSD, if that's a true concept. Because as a result of that surgery, I had to have MRIs first it was quarterly, so every 3 months, and then every 6 months. So every time I would have an MRI, I would just get incredibly antsy and emotional because I didn't want to go through that again. So from an emotional standpoint, it was hard because my children were so young. And all I could really think about was, I have to be here for my kids. Like, because I remember when they asked me, they were like, we can leave it in there and watch it for 6 months. And we can decide what to do after 6 months. Well, I told them at the time I had four. Yep. Yeah, at the time I had four because I had my fourth child in 2009. And I told them, I have four kids. I can't afford to watch something. We're going to have to go in there and get it out. I was like, my kids need me. I can't do that. So from an emotional standpoint, that was the hardest part. Just knowing that the possibility existed, although it wasn't a life-threatening operation, it was the reality of knowing that you can go from all is well on Monday and Monday night, it can be the complete opposite. We can literally be here today, gone today, not even gone tomorrow. We could be here today, gone today. That was eye-opening for me.
I bet. And then kind of to go back to what you said earlier, that your perspective on motherhood changed from this. Because you said in 2012 it changed, and that's when all of this happened. So that's, life changing in a multitude of ways. And then we flash forward, and you ended up graduating law school, and then you also had two more craniotomies. And so
Yeah.
it wasn't the same, or it was different, or what were those?
Each of the craniotomies were isolated. They were not connected. So the one I had in 2016, 4 years later, was a meningioma. And that's a tumor that sits on the meninges. That's the sheet that goes around your brain. That's that, yeah, sheet, for lack of better words, that sits on your brain. And how we discovered it was from the 2012 surgery because I had to have MRIs every year. So we discovered it from a follow-up MRI, and it showed, and it was very small. And so my neurosurgeon said the same thing. He said, well, it's small. We can just keep an eye on it. If you want, we can keep an eye on it, or we can go in there and get it out. Well, by 2016, I now had five because my last child was born in 2014. So I can't do that. I have five. No, we can't watch anything. You're gonna have to go in there and get it out. So I went ahead and I had, fortunately with this craniotomy, they didn't have to pierce the brain because it sat on top of the meninges, which is over the brain. So they didn't have to actually cut into the brain, even though they cut the skull open again. And Erica, they went the same route.
Oh,
Same, entered from the same location, up, same quadrant of hair missing again, same shape, same shape again. It was unbelievable, unbelievable. But that surgery to me was easier to recover from. I don't know why, but it wasn't as bad. I was only there went in on the 29th and I was home by December 2nd. So I had a ton of swelling, up here. But I don't think it was as hard for me to recover. And I think it's because I had already gone through one and I knew what to expect.
mm.
So it wasn't as physically traumatizing. It was harder mentally because I felt like, why am I going through this again?
Yeah.
Who does that? Like, how? And I had just finished law school in 2015. So I was studying for the bar. I didn't even know when I took the bar I had a tumor. Like I had no idea. Listen, I thought the headaches were from studying from the bar, because we study
Yeah.
for hours and hours and hours. You can get a headache from doing that. So I didn't think anything of it. I just thought, yeah, I'm just tired. I've been studying all day. No, it was a whole tumor.
Wow. How old were you with the first one? You were very young.
Well, with the first tumor, I mean,
First
with the
tumor
first
or first craniotomy. Yeah.
2012, so we got to do some math. Okay, I'm 49, and how long ago was 2012? This is 2025. Was that 13 years ago? Did I do that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
so
looking at the, yeah,
49 minus 13, 30,
you're 36.
36. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really young.
Yeah.
That's really young. Yeah. Well, and then you had the third craniotomy. What was your response like towards God? Because it's number three.
I boo-hooed on that one. I did. I boo-hooed. I think the first one I handled pretty well. It was like, okay, let's do what we got to do so I can get back in action. The second one was dismayed. Like, I cannot believe this. Like, who the heck has two unrelated? The third one, I just, I wept, like, genuinely wept, not cry. You know the difference. Like, weeping. Because one, the diagnosis it wasn't a good diagnosis. Even though it was treatable, it just wasn't something you wanted to hear. And then to have the possibility of radiation, the possibility of chemotherapy. That's a lot to take on. And my babies, even though they were older, they'll always be babies to us. So that's really all I could think was, I cannot, Lord, come on now. I cannot leave up out of here. But after I was finished lamenting, I can sincerely say that it turned more into hostility toward the adversary who comes to steal, to kill, and destroy. So I had to now shift my focus off of, God, why is this happening, into, okay, let's go to war. Because what you're not going to do is rob me of my life. I'm not. I'm not leaving prematurely. So you got to start fighting. So you're gonna cry because you're an emotional being, but after that, you gotta put your bootstraps on. You're gonna have to get up and war with the word of God. So, but for the word, because with each surgery, he gave me a particular word to hang on to, a particular scripture to hang on to. And that's what I would have to fight with. It was me with the word of God and my community praying for me and warring against the enemy for my life. I just refuse, for lack of better words, like I refuse to die before my time. I'm just not gonna do that. And that's the attitude and the resilience. Even when I look at what I went through in law school, all the ups and the downs of law school, I still didn't give up. Even though I wanted to sometimes, I didn't give up. But it was the same way with these surgeries. Like, I'm not going down. You're not going to take me out because there's still so much for me to do. So I can either, one, cower out and just take it, or two, we're going to fight for it. You want to fight? We're going to fight for it, like almost tug of war style. And that's what it kind of felt like. He's pulling, I'm pulling. He's pulling, I'm pulling. But we're just going to keep on pulling until it breaks. And it did break. Like, I didn't have to have chemo. I didn't have to have radiation. They were able to get it out with surgery. And I had, the part that you don't know is that I ended up having two surgeries in one night, in one sitting. Because so at the end of the surgery, and of course, my doctor tells me the day after, and my husband was telling me about it the day after the surgery, the following day, they shared with me that the doctor said the tumor was looking so much like brain that he wanted to make sure that he had gotten it all. So they closed me up, took me down for MRI, and the MRI showed, sure enough, that the tumor was still present. So they had to take me where? Back to OR. Open me back up and get out the remaining tumor. But I mean, I'm thankful for that, even though, I was sleep through it. I'm thankful for that because what if he didn't follow what he felt was in his heart to do? Like he told me, he said, I just felt like I needed to be sure. What if he didn't do that? And I believe that that was the Lord prompting him to do that. This thing could have been totally different today if he hadn't felt and gone with what he felt to see if it was gone. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful for favor. I'm grateful that the Lord looked out for my life. He had mercy on not just me, but on my kids so that I can see them or continue to rear them, see them get married and have kids and all that other good stuff.
Yeah. Wow. What's pretty powerful in what you said too was that when the time you're praying before the surgery and you said, I refuse to die before my time.
Yeah.
That, man, that is really powerful because you could have so easily just like, okay, this is my reality, this is what's happening. And like you said, you had to cry, you had to weep, you had to grieve that,
Yeah,
and then put those bootstraps on
for
and
sure.
move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's so huge. Okay, so this happened 3 times, separate occasions, and you shared you had graduated law school. How, with this 3rd time, how much time after healing were you able to really start practicing law?
Let's see. So I had surgery was in 2016. It took me another good year, to recover again physically. Um, and then from there, I retook the bar. And when I passed in 2020, by the time I passed in 2020, wait, I'm mixing up my dates because 16 was second surgery, 2021 was the final surgery. So by that time, I didn't start practicing until 2020. I passed, and I didn't start practicing until after the second surgery. But I didn't immediately jump into it because one, I couldn't get my bearings, if that makes sense. I lost some, although they can't prove it, I know I lost some memory cells, if that's a thing or whatever they call it. I lost something because it took me longer to compute. I wasn't thinking as quickly. I was thinking clearly, but not as quickly. So the words would come to my mind, but they weren't coming out of my mouth quick enough. So it took me a lot longer than I anticipated to fully recover. So I didn't immediately dive back in. So then eventually I did start practicing and I started as a prosecutor, which that was my dream job, to be a prosecutor. And I really loved it, but it was located in another city. And I mean, it was 2 hours away. Yeah, I know. But I wanted the job so badly. So I took it because it was my dream job. And I stayed in that city during the week and I would come home during the weekend. So I did that just during the summer. And I did it for one summer. It felt like an internship. And I did it. It did because I did it for one summer and we contemplated moving. But we both felt like, nah, that's not it. That's not it. So I went from prosecution to prosecution, but in a different county. And then eventually I landed in my own practice. Why? Because I needed my time back. I thought when I started practicing, I would have this euphoric feeling of, okay, my kids are bigger. They kind of have their own thing going on. Now I can dive back in and do what I want to do. I kind of felt like, oh, it's my time again. And I really got a chance to see, like, yeah, no, your kids still need you. It's just a different demand when they become teenagers. It's a different demand, but they still needed me. And I didn't like the hours. I was putting in a lot of hours again, and I was away from home. I never missed anything like going to events. That wasn't the issue, but I wasn't present. I wasn't here because I was focused on my cases and preparing for trial and calling witnesses and talking with police officers. It's draining. So then when my kids would come to me, I didn't have anything left. I was so tired. I mentally spent. And I just felt like this can't be it. I don't believe that you sent me to law school to get to this point to neglect my family. I felt it was neglect. Now, other women may not feel that way. Do you? But I felt like I was neglecting my household. So that's why I started the practice so that I can buy back my time, set my schedule accordingly, still be available for my children, be available for my husband, mentally, emotionally, physically. That's why I did it.
Yeah, yeah, that's huge. And for you to be able to recognize and see that. And so you, for the listeners, you're an estate planning attorney and you started your own practice in 2022. And then you shared with me too that you had to go back to the traditional workforce as a prosecutor just for consistent income.
Yes.
Excuse me. And I've got two more questions. I know we're running out of time. So I want
Good.
to let's see which one I want to ask you. I'm going to combine a couple together and then I have my very last one that I ask everyone. So I'd really love you to speak to just no, we're going to skip that. I want you to just share a little bit of, whatever you want to share as far as like exactly what you're practicing and what that is looking like in this season, because you said that affected your view on yourself as an attorney and the value in who you are, kind of just what you mentioned just now. But you would also share that you are alive and well because Jesus is your healer and he's not done with you yet. And
Yes.
so kind of combining both of that, saying this, I just want to know how that is influencing you as a lawyer and what you're doing, and then just kind of share with that.
Yeah, that's a statement. That's an accurate statement that I gave you, and I still stand by that. That's why I'm here. I think when you go through things like that, where you realize life is so short and can be cut off in a heartbeat, you have to refocus. And you have to get down to the what I call the nitty-gritty or the bare bones of why am I here? You kept me here. Why am I here? So working in estate planning, one of the things my grandparents did for me when they transitioned on to be with the Lord, they had their affairs in order. And I'll never forget that because even though losing them was traumatizing, it was easier because we didn't have to fuss and fight over stuff. They already had it out. And I just kind of thought, if I didn't do criminal law, what area of law would I best serve people? And that's when I thought, you know what? I want to do what my grandparents did for me. I want to make sure I help people get their affairs in order. So that's what I do. I help people to establish their estate planning, whether that's a will, a trust, powers of attorney, all of those types of documents that we need to make that transition easier for when you're gone. You're hopefully, if you're saved, you're gone and you're on with the Lord. Now here it is, your family is left picking up the pieces because you didn't put anything in order. So I like to come alongside of my clients and we get a chance to really talk about this, the importance of having it, getting it done, what that does for your family, the peace that it brings for your family. So one of the reasons why I feel like kept me here is to help other families to prepare for the end. And because if you talk to me long enough, I'm gonna bring up heaven. I'm gonna bring it up, which means if I bring it up, that means we have to talk about where are you? Where's your heart? Are you ready? If he called you tonight, are you ready to go? How do you know you're ready? Are you sure? So it's ministry and it's also business. So I do charge, it's not pro bono, although I do some pro bono work. There is a fee involved, but that's one of the reasons why I'm still here to help people the best way I can. One of the things I've seen is that your life, my life, it's not our own. Our lives don't belong to us. It's my life. I do what I want. No, it is not. It's His. We were put here for His glory. We are His workmanship. And so, whatever He wants us to do with the life that He's given us, that's what I want to do. It's not about what I want anymore. And that's what to me, this whole journey has helped me to see. It's not about what I want. It's what He wants for my life, how He wants to use my life. And age didn't matter. He careth not. King James, he careth not. He doesn't care. He doesn't care how old you are. He's going to use you at whatever age and stage you're in.
Exactly. Yes. And LaVon, I love that answer. And my last question I want to ask you, which is the one I ask all of my guests. So it just kind of ties into what you already said and a lot of what you shared too. But it's so easy for us to look at our lives and say, like, I am too old. I can't do this because of my age, or I've had this life circumstance. Like you said, you had 3 craniotomies. You could have easily just said, I quit. I'm out. I'm tapping out. But you didn't. And so if you could encourage one woman who does feel blocked or limited to pursue a dream or a goal based on her age or a life circumstance, what would you say to her?
Go for it. I mean that sincerely. Why? Because we have a limited amount of time to be here on this earth. And so we can either spend our days trying to fulfill other people's desires and dreams and even our own, because sometimes we want things that the Lord doesn't want for us. And so we have to distinguish. If you know that this is what He has placed in your heart to do, then my only encouragement to you is that you do it and you do it quickly. And what I mean by that, I don't mean rush out and get everything done in one day. I mean, don't hesitate in your obedience. If this is a direction for you, follow Him and follow Him quickly. Because, especially if He tells you to do it. Because if you delay, delayed obedience is actually disobedience. So do what He's put you here to do because you've only got a short window. And once it's gone, it's gone. And you don't want to have regrets at the end of the day. I should have done this. I could have done this. Thinking about what are people going to say? What are they going to think? Nobody's going to stand before the Lord on our behalf. It's just us. What talent, and I don't mean singing, dancing, writing, What is he placed? What is that talent that he's placed in your lap? That's what you're going to be responsible for. Are you going to take those 5 talents and use them and cause them to multiply and grow? Are you going to take that 2, use it, cause it to multiply and grow? Or are you going to be like that servant who took that 1 talent, buried it in the ground? And when the master came back, he said, "What'd you do with it?" "I put it in the ground. I knew that you were, I knew that you were a man where you wouldn't want me to waste it, so I put it in the ground." He said, you wicked servant. You wicked. You didn't do anything with it. So, ladies, and even if a man catches this podcast too, don't waste your talent. Use it. Let God multiply it and let it grow.
LaVon, wonderful answer, man. This is so rich. I just appreciate your time. Would you just share before we leave where people can find you and hear about your services?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity to do that. So my name is Lavonne Cliff Thomas, and my law firm is Cliff Thomas Law. And you can find me at www.cliffthomaslaw.com, or you can just email me at lthomas@cliffthomaslaw.com. And if you need my number, it's 313. This is the office number, 313-395-8586. And yeah, if you're in Michigan and you need my services, look me up.
Awesome. I've got in-laws in Michigan, so you hear that, in-laws? Look
Wow.
her up.
Okay.
Well, Lavonne, this is such a treat. I really appreciate your time and just your wisdom and
Pleasure.
perspective on everything. So thank you so much for joining me today
Thank
on the
you
More
for
Than Your Age
having
podcast.
me. It's been a blast. I appreciate it. And I'll talk
Yeah,
to you soon.
absolutely.